Liebe Frau Grüters, ich werde nachher auf Englisch reden, deshalb möchte ich nur als Einführung Sie alle gratulieren auf der deutsche Astronaut, der gestern ins All mit seinen amerikanischen und russischen Kollegen losgefahren sind. Das ist ein Zeichen für Zusammenarbeit zwischen Völkern, die man mehr Beispiele braucht in einer Zeit, wo es für andere nur mein Land zunächst mein Land first und nur um ihre eigene Interesse geht. Also die Menschheit hat viel mehr zu gewinnen, wenn die zusammenarbeiten, weil es um ihre gemeinsame Zukunft geht. But with those few words, let me start to acknowledge Honorable Monika Grüters, member of the Bundestag, Minister of State in the Chancellor's Office of Culture and Media, Mr. Raphael Groß, President of the Deutsche Historisches Museum in Berlin, that so ably planned and executed this symposium together with his team that we all have the privilege to attend. Distinguished keynote speakers, moderators, panelists, and audience of this symposium. Allow me first of all to tender the apologies of Honorable Katrina Hanse, the Namibian Minister of Education and Culture, who look forward to be present today, but cannot do so due to circumstances beyond her control. She had in mind to flank Honorable Grüters in providing a governmental framework that will guide our discussions, certainly open, controversial, but a structured framework around which we could have a discussion about the sensitive historical issues. I think here particularly it is my honor and privilege to welcome you all on her behalf to this historic symposium entitled The Stone Cross from Cape Cross, Colonial Objects and Historical Justice. I pray for insightful exchanges. I also express the wish that this symposium will contribute to a collective understanding about how, or the most appropriate way of dealing with historically misplaced, displaced cultural objects. I think here particularly about this Cape Cross, Stone Cross Museum behind us here, the the Hendrik Witbooi Bible, which is also here in a museum in Stuttgart, in Baden-Württemberg, and other cultural objects that were estranged from their original historical context during the colonial occupation era. I commend the Deutsche Historisches Museum and the other presidents of historical institutions here in Germany that are courageously subjecting themselves to the question imposed on them by public outcry about the enduring presence of historical objects that have been taken out of the context and that find themselves today far away from Africa or the other countries. I think it is quite courageous on your part to subject yourself to that discussion, that debate, to provide a framework for people to discuss it. Before I go into detail about the intrinsic, inseparable issues of restoration, repatriation, and historical justice associated with these objects. Allow me to digress shortly to the customary practice of the third President of the Republic of Namibia, Dr. Hage Geingob, to designate a leitmotif each year for the country that should guide our reflections as we execute our work. The leitmotif for the inaugural year of the term of office of President Geingob was the year of the Namibian house, based on Harambee prosperity. Harambee is a Kiswahili word meaning let's all pull together in one direction, in the same direction at once, meaning that let's conjugate all our energies towards a common objective instead of working against each other. It's only when we work together that we can achieve what the goals and objectives that we have for our country, for global community. That leitmotif acknowledges, first of all, the divided past. It acknowledges that we come from a divided past, colonial history that separated the people in small, and to think each one like Donald Trump is today saying, think first for my tribe, my clan, my society, do not think about the country as a whole. So it wanted to lay a foundation for consolidating unity based on a divided past that led to war for over 100 years in our country. Secondly, it acknowledges the fact that only together we can achieve progress, not against each other. And that is true not only for a country, communities within a country, but also for the communities all around the world. Thirdly, it calls for an individual and a collective commitment towards a forward-looking, united, common future, and not a divided future. Subsequent leitmotifs in subsequent years underscored the importance of a strong national institutions within the framework of transparent processes that is underpinned by the rule of law and a commitment to justice, which is sine qua non for long-term national and international stability and prosperity. If there is no strong institutions, clear processes, commitment to the rule of law and justice, there can be no basis for stability and prosperity in the world. President Geingob's leitmotifs for this current year is the year of reckoning. Reckoning not in the sense of settling scores about past injustices, but reckoning in the sense of taking stock of where we are, what happened, where we are, and where we are going, where we are with respect to what we want to achieve. And that can also be applied to international relations, Namibia's international relations, particularly with its colonial past. And Namibia had two colonial powers. That was Germany, although it was very brief, only 30 years compared to South Africa, which was apartheid South Africa, not the current South Africa. That was 65 years, the colonial power in Namibia. It is taking stock in that context means be aware of the fact that that colonial relationship existed. It was a relationship under duress. It was enforced on the local communities. It had disastrous consequences for the indigenous and people in the affected communities, and that post-colonial states, and that applies equally to Namibia and South Africa. The post-colonial Namibian state has an opportunity an obligation to ensure that the future is better than the past that we experience. Ethnographic museums like the Deutsche Historische Museum are at the cutting edge of that debate, inspired by academics and grassroots communities, and activist pressures to decolonize that history of estranged, misplaced, and displaced human remains, but also cultural objects. In 2017, the Research Center for Material Culture highlighted these mounting pressures on ethnographic museums and historical museums in a symposium that was entitled Reckoning with History, Colonial Past, and Museums' Futures, and Doing Justice in the Present. Because reckoning about the past without the intent to doing justice in the present has no meaning and has no purpose. It would be fruitless to engage in that exercise if it is not directed towards a purpose of repairing, undoing the injustices that have been done in the past. The resulting discussions around pertinent questions about how to imagine a future for these institutions and their collections in a post-colonial present sparks quite a lively debate, and I hope we will experience that today as well. There is growing national and international consensus that reckoning with history and colonial past with the aim to do justice in the present is what is referred to in the international law as erga omnes, that is, rights and obligations of all to all. We have a collective responsibility and obligation to look after our environment, because it is an obligation that we have as all of us towards all of us, because we will destroy that collective. It's an erga omnes responsibility. In international law, neither governments nor corporates or ordinary persons can extract and exonerate themselves from erga omnes responsibilities. The growing importance of the affirmation of erga omnes by all is motivated by President Guibeb when he changed the name of our ministry from Foreign Affairs Ministry to a Ministry of International Relations and Cooperation. And he motivated that, saying, we live in a globalized world where we need to hold hands across countries and continents to ensure the ecological survival of our planet and of humankind. We may speak different languages, have different religions and different colors, but at the end of the day, we are all humans. We therefore no longer speak of foreign affairs or affairs that concern only other countries, but of international relationships, because that is what we have to forge: international relationships, cooperation, and partnerships between friends in charting the common developmental paths between countries and peoples. Thus, conscious of their erga omnes, that is the obligation to reckon with history of the colonial past between them, but not with the aim to point fingers but with the aim to restore and establish restorative justice in the present. To do so in the post-colonial era, Namibia and post-apartheid South Africa upgraded their bilateral relations to the highest diplomatic level. That is also a gesture of reconciliation. Highest diplomatic level of a binational commission, which brings together the two countries under the leadership of their heads of state every year to discuss all and sundry issues relating to their common past, but also their joint future. Reckoning about the current state of relations between Namibia and Germany since independence in 1990, I regret to note that the last high-level visit of a serving German Chancellor dates to the visit of Chancellor Helmut Kohl. That's quite a while back. And that no serving Chancellor or President has visited Namibia since the visit of Chancellor Helmut Kohl. When I related this fact to Chancellor Merkel following the passing of Helmut Kohl, Chancellor Merkel remarked, das ist schrecklich, that between countries that have such historic ties, where 34,000 Namibians of German descent live, the only African country in which German is one of the official languages on the African continent, one of the official languages in the African, in recognition that the Namibians of German descent are as much integral part of Namibia as a nation, where 90% population is Christian, 70% Evangelische Kirche, 20% Roman Catholic, churches that were founded from missionaries that came from Germany. So those ties, cultural, religious, in terms of the democratic state that we have built since, are based on the foundations of examples that come from the experience in Germany and in Europe, but that there has been no high-level engagements between our two governments. That is something that I regret. It is regrettable because the German-French partnership and friendship is the pillar and the anchor for stability, for peace that Europe has known, for the longest period of peace that Europe has known. And the German-Namibian partnership, based on firm institutions and closer cooperation, could similarly serve as a pillar of stability for democracy, for peace in Africa. I think this is not only an appeal to the Chancellor, but also to all ministers of the federal states, the different of the German government, but also to the federal states of Germany, because it is an erga omnes. It's a collective responsibility to uphold historical ties that connects Germany with Africa, and that it could be a symbol for that justice that Germany wishes to bring in international relations. I feel that two resolutions adopted by the German Bundestag in 1989, that is the year that coincided with the independence of Namibia, but also with the Berlin Wall, coming down of the Berlin Wall that united Germany. Those two resolutions could serve as a basis for that institutional framework that would provide both governments the opportunity to deal with the past in constructing a future that is just of the special relationship that is mentioned. And these two resolutions have something in common. They both, first of all, they were unanimously adopted. The entire members, all the members of the Bundestag voted in favor of those two resolutions. There was a moment of consensus in the Bundestag. Many other resolutions were passed that are not adopted because the opposition wouldn't support what the government is proposing. But those two resolutions in 1989, and those two resolutions emphasize both the special relationship between Germany and Namibia because of history, for moral and historical reasons. Moral, most probably, is the topic that occupies us here. The moral, because the colonial rule was linked with a genocide against the Nama and the Herero people, besides the displacement of cultural objects. But it says also, for the historical reasons, that there is an obligation on the side, there is a justification for that special relationship between Namibia and Germany. The genocide question is a subject of negotiations between delegations of Namibia and Germany that are led by Mr. Ruprecht Polenz and Dr. Z. Ngavirwe. They are the two special envoys, together with their delegations designated by the respective governments to explore amicable solution that will be submitted to the two governments for approval to the Bundestag and the Namibian Parliament. I want to use this opportunity to debunk a claim made by detractors that affected communities are not involved in the genocide negotiations between the German and the Namibian governments. To the contrary, the government of Namibia has put in place a transparent framework to ensure that descendants and victims of the 1904 to 1908 genocide are on board and play an active role in the ongoing negotiations. Moreover, Dr. Z. Ngavirwe, the counterpart of Mr. Polenz, himself is a direct descendant of the Kavadembe dynasty, which administered the area in which one of those important battles at Waterberg took place in the Omaheke region of Namibia. Therefore, there are close to 10 members of the technical committee present in these negotiations. So there is actually, it's an absolute lie to say that the affected communities are not involved in the discussions between the two governments. There is provision and framework set for government chiefs, a framework set up for the Namibian government, by the Namibian government, for chiefs of the affected communities to directly engage with the Vice President of Namibia and with Dr. Ngavirwe for the purposes of regular briefings before and after each negotiation round. On a more general note, allow me to, in closing, to share my sincere conviction that an all-encompassing institutional framework like Namibia set up with South Africa after independence of a binational commission would provide both German and Namibian government to regularly, annually, alternately in Namibia and in Germany, discuss these sensitive and contentious issues so that there is political involvement from the highest level of governance to the ordinary person in resolving those issues. I have prepared a written statement that I will share through the Deutsche Historische Museum with all the participants. It will be copied and made available. But I wish to just address the last issue of the stone cross. The stone cross was removed from Portugal to Germany because it represented at that time Portuguese colonial dominion or rule over that area. Germany wanted to assert its own colonial dominion and rule over the territory, and it was removed and it was brought to Germany. Documentary evidence regarding the Cape Cross stone is clear and unequivocal. We have Mr. Helbrecht here from the Namibian Archive, who has done remarkable work about the evidence of the stone cross, and he will make his contribution during the discussions here. But our view as a government is that historical objects should be returned to the countries and origins. They are testimonies of history. And Namibia is a country that is very well organized. And if I may say, adel verpflichtet, das war eine deutsche Kolonie. Many of our fellow colleagues out of Africa countries that visited Namibia say this is not Africa. It is too organized. It is too organized. But I think we know how to go about and look after relics of history, which is not only a German history or Namibia, but it is a common history. And Namibians of German descent, deutschsprachige Namibier, die völlig teilnehmen in dieser Gestaltung von der modernen namibischen Staat, werden dazu auch zusehen, dass wir mit Sorgfalt umgehen mit dieser Geschichte, gemeinsame Geschichte, deutsch-namibische Geschichte. And that's why I think I would recommend that in the case of the stone cross, just like Baden-Württemberg just communicated today, a few days ago, the Minister of Education of Research wrote to the embassy to inform us that they want to remit the Witbooi Bible that is in the Stuttgart Museum. But that I think we should be encouraged. Currently, Dr. Carsten Seeling from Bremen is leading a delegation in Namibia and transmitted the same message to the Namibian government that they want to return remains that are in their museum to Namibia, to be kept in the Namibian archives as a testimony of our common history. I think it would be good that we start discussions with the Deutsche Historische Museum also to bring back the cross to its original place. Be assured that Namibia would use it, protect it, and make it available whenever you want to have a Wander. Here you call it Wanderausstellungen, roaming, traveling exhibitions, but we would share it as a common symbol of our history that links us, but also that obliges us to a common obligation for a better future in the future. I thank you very much for your indulgence for my lengthy statement, and wish all a very productive and insightful exchanges. Thank you very much.